I don't really have a great answer for your question because I really don't give a fuck.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Price Check Sports Podcast, brought to you by the In the Zone Network, where we go city to city, state to state, worldwide. NBA world is on fire right now. Of course, you got players moving, securing bags. You got teams either left in turmoil or securing their rosters. So, of course, we just got to jump right into the free agent moves that are happening right now. Free agency started here on Sunday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. And we got a lot of moves so far. Some that are, of lesser consequence than others. But biggest one, of course, Paul George going and doing a reverse Will Smith and Fresh Prince, going from L.A. to Philadelphia, is now the newest member of the Philadelphia 76ers. Nice deal, 4 years, $212 million. So talk about securing a bag, real big bag there, secured by Paul George. In a move that, of course, leaves the Clippers a little bit in flux. And I think instantly, if healthy, which is always the case with the 76ers, especially Joel Embiid, if healthy, turns the 76ers into a legitimate NBA championship contender in the East. Now, they're still building out the rest of that roster. Of course, they brought back Kelly Oubre on a nice team-friendly deal, 2 years, $16 million. Brought in Andre Drummond, again, as a backup center to Joel Embiid. 2 years, $10 million for him. So starting to round out those pieces, they got a few more, tweaks to make here to get the right supporting cast around Maxey, Paul George, and Joel Embiid. Also, shout out to Tyrese Maxey, nice 5-year, $204 million extension for him. So I like the move for Philly, though. If it is going to lead to less pressure for Embiid, less pressure on Maxey, and giving him a third guy that has been there in a lot of different big games, a lot of different wars. While he's come up short in some of those, he's also played well recently in his playoff history. I think it's a good move for the Sixers. They needed another injection of talent on that roster, specifically within that starting five, and they definitely got that with Paul George. Now, the Clippers into this officially makes the Paul George trade that they made back in 2019 probably, at least to me, the worst trade of all time. It's one of those things where you've got, all of the picks that they gave up, in addition to a guy who is now an MVP candidate in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And not to mention, speaking of the picks that they gave up, they not only still have an unprotected first-round pick to give up here in 2026, they've got a pick swap next year as well. So if this thing goes south, which, they brought back James Harden, 2 years, $70 million. Kawhi signed his extension, but outside of that, they got a lot of just average guys. They're one Kawhi Leonard injury away now from a potential disaster season, especially when you consider they're opening a new arena in Los Angeles this upcoming season. So definitely not good if you're a Clippers fan, the few of those that are out there. So next, got to move to Klay Thompson. Of course, he was another domino to fall yesterday. Talked about him potentially going to one of LA teams, ultimately ends up doing a sign and trade with the Dallas Mavericks. He'll join Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving, the defending Western Conference champs, on a sign and trade deal that'll net him 3 years, $50 million starting with next season. An end of an era for Golden State, Splash Brothers, two guys in the backcourt that you didn't really think you would ever see split up, but it's definitely now the case. And so Warriors kind of left in a similar situation as the Clippers, kind of looking around, seeing what's next. They had prioritized a Paul George deal themselves, ultimately did not get that sign and trade done. Chris Paul has now left. He's on the move to San Antonio, 1 year, $11 million deal for him. And, they're constantly just kind of looking around, seeing they don't have many options left. They tried, moving Chris Paul, Andrew Wiggins, and, a couple of the young guys for Paul George. Ultimately, the deal did not go through. Now, they talked about potentially shifting to a Zach LaVine deal, which it looks like they declined. Maybe they try to go after DeMar DeRozan. Doesn't really seem like he fits what they would typically like to do. They did sign DeAnthony Melton to a 2-year deal, so we'll see what kind of pieces they decide to add around the fringes there. But they're probably kind of stuck with the team that they have, and a team that, if you remember, of course, they lost in the play-in last year. So not looking good for the Clippers. Not looking good for the Warriors. In addition to the Clippers, now that Klay Thompson has left. I like the move for Dallas. He's definitely an upgrade for them in terms of their shooting. We saw in the finals, relying on guys like P.J. Washington, Derrick Jones Jr. to knock down threes for you. While you can get that here and there, it definitely was not a consistent. They needed that just a little bit more consistency when it comes to the guys around Luka and Kyrie and just being able to be standstill, knockdown shooters. You got one of the best shooters of all time. Now, whether or not you're getting, the old Clay or just an old Clay will, still remains to be seen. He did go 0 for 10 in the play-in game last year from three-point range, so we'll see what Clay they get. But I think if you're getting a guy that can shoot 40% from three-point range, very low maintenance like we know Clay to be, the style definitely fits in well with what Luka and that team want to accomplish. So good move there for the Dallas Mavericks. Now, a couple smaller moves with some well-known names. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope leaves the Denver Nuggets, goes and gets 3 years, $66 million from the Orlando Magic. Great move to me by the Orlando Magic. This is a team that was 30th in three-pointers made last year. They were 24th in three-point percentage last year, and you're getting a guy that shoots 40% from three, going and shifting gears from the Denver Nuggets to the Orlando Magic now. So good move for Orlando. And then you got Isaiah Hartenstein. Got some big money here from Oklahoma City, leaving the Knicks for 3 years, $87 million going to OKC. They got another big. They got a rebounder, which they desperately needed in the playoffs, and probably the only reason they lost to Dallas last year, not being able to secure some of those rebounds late in games. They got their answer. Now, was that a deal that I was expecting? Not necessarily expecting Isaiah Hartenstein to get $87 million, but as you know, here on the Price Check, we celebrate all secure bags. So we'll tip our hat to Isaiah Hartenstein, a black man getting paid, for those of y'all who didn't know. So we also saw some contract extensions here over the past couple days. Jason Tatum securing the largest contract in NBA history. Shout out St. Louis's own Jason Tatum, 5 years, $314 million. We see what you did there, JT, with the contract number. And then his teammate, Derek White, also securing 4 years, $125 million from the Boston Celtics. Now, a story that's a little bit adjacent to that, got those extensions, and then it was immediately reported after that the Boston Celtics will be up for sale by their owner or governor, Wick Grossbeck. That sale is going to take place over the span of the next few years, so they'll incrementally start selling pieces off of that minority ownership stake here between 2024 and 25, and then ultimately that will all shift by the end of 2028. So something to keep an eye out on. That's probably going to be the highest team sale that we've seen here in NBA history. Whenever that number comes out, we'll see who the major players are in that. But that was note that came out after those extensions got finalized yesterday. And then, of course, today news broke Donovan Mitchell of the Cleveland Cavaliers is staying in Cleveland, 3 years, $150 million. Now, one team that we have to mention, of course, Los Angeles Lakers. A lot of fans out there thinking, okay, well, hey, what does this mean for the Lakers? Have they struck out on their options? We know that they never were really in on like a Paul George or even a KCP. They were definitely in on Klay Thompson. LeBron James has talked about potentially taking a pay cut depending on what free agents are available and which ones would be willing to sign there for the Lakers' full mid-level exception, which is right at about $13 million. So far, they haven't been able to get anybody to bite. Klay Thompson, we talked about, passed on that. James Harden was one of the guys that LeBron listed. He went back to the Clippers. Jonas Valanciunas, even the big man from New Orleans, decides to go take 3 years and $30 million from the Washington Wizards. So talk about a DeMar DeRozan. He's a guy that apparently is on LeBron James's list. There's another player or two apparently on that list as well. But let's just be honest, the options are starting to dwindle a little bit. You can talk about potential trade options of like a Jeremy Grant from Portland or Brook Lopez from the Milwaukee Bucks, but when it's all said and done, that's not really the splash that the Lakers were hoping to make this offseason. So, looking forward, you got J.J. Redick brought in as the new head coach. Lakers drafted LeBron James Jr., to kind of appease to LeBron, which is probably the reason why he's willing to take that pay cut, or at least, has said that he's willing to take that pay cut. We'll see if it actually happens or if he does take the full max, depending on what other signings are left. But this is probably the team that you're going to have. You had D'Angelo Russell opt in. You still got Austin Reeves, Rui Hachimura, got the steal of the NBA draft in Dalton Knecht from Tennessee, a guy I think that's going to help the Lakers immediately with his shooting and his ability to score. But your team is probably your team at this point. Is it a team that's probably going to be, fighting for the fringes of the play-in, that 6 or maybe even 5 seed, depending on, kind of what happens with the Clippers in their fall. But this is probably the team. You're just going to have to, hope that LeBron James, even at this advanced stage in his career, alongside Anthony Davis, hopefully those guys are able to kind of get you over the hump. But right now, not looking great as far as additional moves for the Lakers. Now, before we go, a couple trades took place since the last time that we recorded as well. A couple grades that we want to give out on those trades. Now, of course, the biggest one, Mikal Bridges going from one New York team, Brooklyn Nets, to another, or I guess to the New York team, New York Knicks. Villanova Knicks, the jokes have been going on here for about a week now. But overall, I think it's a great trade for the Knicks, bringing in another wing defender that can help them overcome the Celtics in that tough Eastern Conference. A guy that, again, has been on a finals team before out in Phoenix, and a guy who does not necessarily need to dominate the ball in order to make an impact. So when you look at the team that they've built outside of just the Villanova aspect, they put all the necessary pieces around a guy like Jalen Brunson, who can, of course, with his scoring, push you on his back, but what can the other pieces around him do to take some of that pressure off, mainly defensively? Definitely think this is a great move in that direction. Now, they're still probably a little bit more thin in the front court than I would like for them to be, but they can still, they still have the Julius Randle contract to trade if they wish to do so. Probably will bring back Precious Achiuwa, who was there with them last year after the RJ Barrett trade. So they got some ways to account for that. I'll give the Knicks a B+ for landing Bridges, with a hope that they had a better front court option, maybe either come with them or, have signed since then. But give them a B+, especially now with Hardenstein gone to OKC. And then for the Nets, it's an A+ to me because guess what? You get to get all the picks that you need back. They got their own picks back from Houston to be able to tank with. And, it's full no-limit soldier mode in Brooklyn right now. Tanks everywhere. It's tanking. They're going for Cooper Flag in the draft. They want one of those top picks, and it's very apparent with how early into the offseason they were able to get that one done. A+ for me for the Brooklyn Nets. Now, last trade, of course, Dejounte Murray going from the Atlanta Hawks to the New Orleans Pelicans. In a trade where the Hawks, man, you take back Larry Nance Jr., okay, decent role player, good big man. Dyson Daniels, a guy who still got some question marks, got a lot of upside, but still some question marks about him, as well as 2 first-round picks. You got the unprotected Lakers pick for 2025 and the lesser of the 2 first-round picks between New Orleans and Milwaukee in 2027. Absolutely an A for the Pelicans. I actually predicted that Pelicans would trade for Trae Young. They went to the Hawks and got a different point guard. But all in all, they get a point guard, a guy that can help them create a little bit more offense late in games, which they were definitely terrible at last season. And you got a guy that can take some of that ball handling pressure off of a guy like Zion, help him get into spots where he's going to be able to score a little bit more easily, take some of that point guard duty off of CJ McCollum. And again, they still have some other picks to trade. They still have the Brandon Ingram contract to trade if they can't come to an agreement on an extension. So I do think they've still got moves that they can make. Now, they need a big, also losing Jonas Valanciunas, but still, slam dunk trade, no brainer, especially with the return that they were having to send out. You make that deal 101 times out of 100. The Hawks, though, I'll give them a C because of the picks, but in terms of players that they got in return, I don't know how that necessarily helps you be good immediately. You got decent role guys, but if you're going to still stick this thing out with Trae, you had the number 1 pick, you're not going to go into a full-blown rebuild because you don't have your own pick for next year. I thought that they would maybe try to swing for a little bit more of a home run as opposed for a single. That's, of course, bringing the baseball analogy into it, but they took what was deemed to be a little bit more of a safer route as opposed to kind of going for it. And you can't necessarily go safe with a team that was already performing under expectation. You got to go for it a little bit, and they failed to do that. So give them a C for the picks in that one. But overall, not a deal that I liked from the Hawks end of things. Now, that's going to do it for us on this episode of the Price Check. We'll continue to come to bring some content here throughout the summer, but it'll kind of be as the sports news dictates, right? WNBA will be going to a little bit of a hiatus here as the Olympics get started. Of course, we know the NBA offseason is going to start trickling down here slowly but surely. So as we get closer to like football training camps and things, of course, we'll be back on our weekly schedule. But until then, sprinkle in some interviews, sprinkle in some other things as news allows for us to. But we'll otherwise take a little bit of a break ourselves just to come back bigger and better for next season. So, till next time, ladies and gentlemen, I am your host, Josh Price. This is the Price Check.